It's a pleasure to be here today with you. This job takes me to some very interesting places, and this is one that I'm very much looking forward to. In the last 2 weeks, I had the privilege and opportunity to speak to 750 teachers, and I had, by the way, the compelling urge immediately to confess all my high school sins, which apparently happens to many speakers there. And then I was in the back of a pickup truck 3 days later speaking at a rally in Victoria for federal service, PSAC workers. So it's an interesting life this is, and I'm fascinated to be here and be part of the conversation today. I'd also like to start, I don't know how many times I can say this in the very near future. First time delegate, first time speaker. I'd also like to start by acknowledging we are meeting today on the unceded territory of the Stolo Chehalis and Coast Salish First Nations. This is beautiful land, and they have been marvelous stewards of this land for literally thousands of years. We're appreciative of being here today on their land. I had the opportunity to ride my motorbike up today, by the way, David, on this beautiful land and see it firsthand, and that changes our carbon offset at least a tiny bit because it's 60 miles per gallon instead of my pickup truck, which should probably change. I'm going to introduce 4 ministers over the next 24 hours or so. And I just want to take a moment before I introduce the first minister here today, BC Minister, to recognize that we are now in the sitting of the House in Victoria. And with the structure of government this time, a rather unique structure, there is no downtime for ministers of the governing party. It's all hands on deck. And the ministers during the sitting of the House, it's early in the morning till late at night, and votes can occur right to the very last minute. So obviously there's a need to be in the House and doing their job on behalf of British Columbians. And Fridays when the House is sitting are the days that the ministers and the MLAs can get back to their constituency offices. Saturdays and Sundays they might get to see their family for a few minutes, and for those particularly who don't live in Victoria, back they go and put on the work boots and work gloves and represent British Columbians in the House. So I think it's tremendous, and I just want to state my appreciation to all of the ministers for the time they're taking to be with us during that downtime that they get. And with that, it's now my pleasure to introduce the Honourable Selina Robinson, Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, to bring remarks today on housing in BC 1 year after unveiling BC's first housing plan. Minister.
Wow, it's so great to be back among all of you. And I do remember a time when it was me sitting there and wishing for a government who had the values that we all share. And so I am very proud to be here representing our government and bringing you up to speed on what we've been up to. But first, I'd like to acknowledge the territory of the Chehalis and the Stolo First Nation, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity to gather on their traditional territories. And I want to acknowledge that I have a number of colleagues who will be coming over the next 24 hours, and I know that we're all very excited to be here because while we do spend a lot of time in Victoria and it is all hands on deck, this is a very exciting place for us to be because we're among friends, and it means that we get to have some really good, meaningful conversations about what we're doing and what more we need to do. So this is, while it's work, it's not such bad work. So we're really glad to be here. And I want to thank the Center for Civic Governance and the Columbia Institute for always being there for progressive voices. And I can remember when I first got elected, I was a very naive, I guess, citizen of Coquitlam, and I stepped up around homelessness, interestingly enough. Never expected that I would actually be the Minister for Housing. And I remember hearing about Charlie, actually, I think from David. And so you need to call her. Actually, it was Gloria who told me. It was David's mother who said I was feeling a little bit lost. I didn't have a lot of progressive colleagues on my council. And Gloria said, oh, you need to call Charlie. And it's like, okay. So I called Charlie, and she introduced me to the Columbia Institute. And it really felt like I found a home. I found a place where I could go and talk about the ideas that I had, talk about the progressive values that we all shared. And while we didn't always agree, it just felt like I was valued for having these ideas and that was okay. And so it really does feel feel like coming home. So I want to thank all of you who have been working diligently over the years to make sure that we had a space and that we had a place to talk about things that matter to us, to talk about social justice, and to talk about making the world a better place for everybody. And so now I'm part of a government. I never expected I would be here, like I said. 10 years ago, if you'd asked me if I would be doing this role, I would have said, get out of here, there's no way. But here we are. And our government is really all about helping people. It's people, every day. John Horgan says to us at every cabinet meeting, at every caucus meeting, we're about people. That's our focus. And that's why I like being here, because I know that that's what you believe as well. You're equally passionate about making life better for British Columbians. Whether it's research, advocacy, policy, legislation, service, or any combination thereof, and I'm pretty sure that we all do a combination thereof, that we're always paying attention to what do people need in our neighborhoods and in our cities, in our province. What do they need? And so with so much going on in so many levels, it makes opportunities like this to come together and to talk about what we're all doing and where we all want to go and how we can exchange information and how we can be supportive so that we can keep moving in the direction that we all want to go, and how we can learn from each other to push and to move the needle, to move the dial so that everyone can participate in the economy, everyone can participate in having a good life, because I know that those are our shared values. So when I was looking at the theme of this conference, Rising to the Challenge, it got me thinking. Mostly because it's a fitting theme, not only for the discussions that will take place over the next couple of days, but for so much that has been happening around the province since we formed government. To say that housing is an issue shaping our times right now, I think is an absolute understatement. And I don't think anybody here would disagree with that. Through my contact with the UBCM and even in my constituency office, in my travels, and I do get to do that, there's no such thing as a weekend now, it's really about where are we going. I hear time and time again how much of a challenge it is for people to find safe, affordable housing. And I had the fortune, well, it actually wasn't a fortune, I was in opposition and I hated it, but I had the fortune of being the critic for local government. And I loved it, not the critic part, but the local government part. And I got to meet so many people who serve in local government. And I really mean serve because it's not for the pay. It really is about serving the community. And one of the things that I did here in those travels over the last 5 years was housing in small and rural British Columbia, which I never would have expected would be as challenging as it has been. So it's not just an urban issue, and I know we tend to focus on the urban side, but this really is a housing crisis right across the province. It is robbing families, seniors, and people of peace of mind, of opportunities to get ahead, and of hope for a better future. I do, however, believe that opportunities can be found when we have these sorts of challenges. Maybe I'm an optimist. No, actually, I am an optimist. It's not maybe, I am. Because I can see the potential. I can see when I talk to different groups of people that there is potential for us to rise to this challenge that is before all of us, this housing crisis. But we have to be working together. It is about our coming together that will allow us to find the best, the most innovative, and the most creative ways out of a housing crisis that was created by others. But it's up to us to solve it. And that's what we've been doing over the past year since I was last here. And I have to tell you, it's been, can't believe it's been a year because it's been moving so quickly because we have been moving so fast on so many different ways. So our 30-point housing plan, Homes for BC, is well underway now. In fact, we are already more than halfway through our plan. I want to just give you some numbers because I think there's some stuff that I think would be really very telling for you. We have close to 17,000 new homes in progress. 17,000 over the last year out of BC Housing. The previous government in 16 years built 27,000 units. 27,000 units over 16 years, 17,000 in progress in 1 year. So when we think about people like Pauline, a grandmother who now has a stable home where her grandchildren can finally come to visit, in helping her, we are helping generations of this family to stay connected and to support one another. Or people like Joey, who has been living on the Wally Strip in Surrey before moving into modular housing. When he compared it to being like at Club Med. For Joey, this was incredibly impactful. And I want to tell you a story about Surrey, because when I think back to this last year and a half, and I think about, there are some moments that stand out that say, this is why I don't have weekends with my family. And it's okay. This isn't a complaint. I'm not complaining. I made a choice. But when you hear some of these stories and you see the impact, you say, you know what, it was worth it. And it is, and there are some days when I say it's not worth it. But addressing the Wally Strip, how many of you had seen the Wally Strip? Okay. I had never in my life expected that we would see that here ever. To see 5 blocks of tents and tarps along a sidewalk. It was horrifying. It looked like a war zone. And we weren't doing anything about it. There was no plan. Who are we? How did we get here? And what the fuck are we going to do about it? I know my staff aren't happy that I swore, but they'll deal with it. So I want to tell you what it took, because it wasn't hard. It was about political will. And I called up Linda Hepner, she was the mayor at the time, and I said, Linda, I want to do this. Can I count on you? Can I count on you and your council to work with us? And she said, Selina, what do you want me to do? And I said, this is what we need. We need you to identify 5 sites, 5 temporary sites. They don't have to be permanent, 5 sites. Talk to your developers, whatever land you have, wherever you can find land. And we're going to bring 170 temporary modular homes, as soon as we can. And I want this done. It's not acceptable. And she said, okay, I'm going to get on it. And it took about 6 months to sort of get everything in order, move it along. And at one point, I got a text from her saying, can you call me? And it's like, okay. So I call, I say, Linda, what's up? She says, well, there's a hiccup here. I'm hearing your people over there aren't doing this, and this needs to be done. And I said, well, let me check. And I go to my people, and they said, no, it's the city. And I said, okay. I called Linda up. I said, we are not doing this. We're not finger pointing. I'm going to go talk to my people, you go talk to your people, and let's rendezvous again at 0400 hours or whatever that language speak is. But I wanted us to be really clear that we were going to fix this. This was not about finger pointing. This was not about somebody else's responsibility. It's somebody else's fault. We are going to fix this. And God bless her. She called me up a couple hours later and she says, okay, I think we got it sorted out. And I said, good. And it wasn't about whose fault. I didn't care. We didn't care. And in July, we had a cabinet retreat, and I got a text from staff that showed before pictures and then after pictures. And this text went something like, Minister, we moved 170 people over 3 days into homes. And here's what it looks like now. And it was done. And I showed the Premier. And we were weepy. I shared it with Cabinet. We were weepy. We did it. And we did it quickly, and we did it collaboratively. And we didn't make it anyone else's fault. We just fixed 16 years of bad. And we got it done. And there are more success stories like this one. But those success stories are only possible because of local governments that are also rising to the challenge. In less than a year, we reached our goal of confirming 2,000 modular homes throughout the province. We gave ourselves 3 years to get that done, but in less than a year, local government stepped up and said, we want to do this with you. And we appreciate the 22 communities that have shown real leadership. Communities like Vancouver, Abbotsford, New Westminster, Burnaby, Surrey, and Chilliwack. I just actually came from Chilliwack, where we're in the process of opening up 46 homes for the people of Chilliwack, for the residents of Chilliwack. They're residents who are sleeping rough, but they're still residents of Chilliwack. These communities have stepped up to help people get off the street and into a place that they can call their own. And I remember last year when I was here, we talked about the concerns that some neighbors had about modular housing. But I can tell you, as the housing continues to go up and people continue to move in, we are seeing perceptions change. And that's because when we provide homes for people who need them, the impacts don't end with the people being housed. The benefits extend beyond the housing and into the community, to the first responders who are no longer called out to a camp, to the surrounding neighbors who are tired of picking up needles, and to the businesses, like the businesses on Wally Strip, where they no longer have to move and maneuver around tents and tarps to access their businesses. They are now open for business. And I want to tell you that in Smithers, the local shelter will be closing on Sunday. Sunday, is that the 31st? I'm so out of touch with the dates. Sorry, it's just the nature of going back and forth to Victoria. Because the new modular housing has opened up and everybody's housed. There are no more homeless people in Smithers. Indigenous peoples have unfortunately been impacted by the housing crisis to a far greater degree than other British Columbians. And it doesn't matter whether the housing need is on or off reserve. We have to work together to build the homes that Indigenous families, youth, and elders need. And that's why our province made the decision to become the first, and we're still the only province in Canada, to open our funding opportunities to build homes on reserve. And we said that no matter where the need is, we are ready to work with Indigenous partners to deliver homes in communities right across British Columbia. We've also opened all of our housing funds to Indigenous organizations and First Nations. And this is what the Katzie First Nation Chief, Grace Leon, had to say. It is a monumental gift for our community that will have a significant impact for generations to come. They are British Columbians and they deserve housing too. One of the ways that we are creating new opportunities is through the Housing Hub. It's a new division of BC Housing that we created, and it's seeking partners to build new affordable market rental housing and owner-purchased housing. And we created the Housing Hub because we saw that others wanted to join us in rising to the challenge. They just didn't know how. So we put together some great people and created a team of experts to work with a whole range of interested groups. Whether it's municipalities, developers, nonprofits, landowners, real estate agents, faith-based sector. It's about bringing all of these groups together so that they too can participate with us to figure our way out of this housing crisis. And in just 1 year, we have met with over 300 interested groups to discuss 1,000 different projects. 1,000 different projects. Now, not all of them will work through, but think about what that means in terms of the opportunities ahead of us. We are continuing to deliver this kind of housing for the missing middle. This is where I think we focus our energies to address the housing crisis, because it requires real partnership and leadership from local governments. And as we all tackle the challenge of ensuring that every person in every community has access to the safe, affordable housing that they need. And so I think it's opportunities like today to get us together to discuss this issue. It's just so important that we remember that we need to work together, whether it's through formal meetings, casual networking, or events like this where we learn from one another. It's these discussions that allow us to see how all of the pieces of the puzzle can fit together. And I just want to do one other little comment about, and it's part of my file, which wasn't punishment, it's TransLink, but it really is about the interoperability between local government housing and transit and how important that link is. And so it's about how do we work together? How do I work the files together? How do I work with all of the various partners together to meet communities' needs for reliable and affordable transportation? It is a key element of how we live. But it's also a chance to increase affordable housing options and density along rapid transit lines and make sure that people have more opportunities to find a way to live and work near transit and spend less time stuck in traffic. And in the end, whether it's housing, transportation, or anything else we do, it's always people who are at the heart of all of our decisions. And that's why all of our partnerships, whether it's local governments, Indigenous leadership, private sector, nonprofit sector, faith-based community groups, it's also important that we pay attention to working together and how we can do that and how we can together rise to the challenges ahead of us. And I'll admit, the way forward isn't easy. None of this is easy, but together it's possible. So I just want to acknowledge and thank each and every one of you for being here today, for continuing to do the work that you do. Many of you we've partnered with already. Many of you we're going to be partnering soon, I hope. But I know that together we can rise to the challenge. So thank you for having me here today.